It has been 4 very special years for me as director of the Holland House. In these 4 years I have had the pleasure to work very closely together with our ambassador, with Jeroen Roodenburg. Today we're going to look back on 4 very relevant years for our bilateral relationship. Many milestones, many projects, many visits. Jeroen, thank you very much for joining us.
Jan-Willem, thank you so much, and really the pleasure is mine. Great to have this interview with you for our dear friends and members of Holland House and other interested listeners. It will be looking back, but also, I hope, looking ahead.
Let's do that. Thank you again. It's with a bit of sadness, I have to say. 4 years have gone by for me very quickly. Also, it has been 4 years with a lot of very positive developments, a very interesting time also to be in Colombia. And I think there's many things I would like to discuss with you today, to look back and also to look forward, like you mentioned. But we have to make a selection. The idea is to pick out some of the most important milestones we have had in this period. The first one for me would be that when you arrived to Colombia 4 years ago, that was a very special moment also for the country Colombia. If we look at the peace agreement and we look at the timing of your arrival to the country, how has that been for you? How has it been for you to be in this country in this very important moment in the Colombian history?
Yeah, no, I think you're very right, Jan-Willem. I arrived in August 2016, and a month later, with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was in Cartagena when the peace agreement, where the peace agreement was signed, and I think it was an historic moment. And I also continue to believe that it is an historic agreement of the utmost importance to the Colombians, to Colombia. Now I know, of course, having been here for 4 years, that it was not without a discussion, it was not without criticism that this peace agreement came about. But I really think it has been important. That's why our government, the Netherlands government, decided to support the implementation of this agreement. And we focused on certain topics, important topics we think, like rural development, land formalization, transitional justice, demining. And let me just say here that of course the peace agreement does not mean that from one day to the other, de la noche a la mañana, as they say here, the situation has improved. It's a process. It's a hard process for many people because a lot has happened in those 50 years. But we think and we hope that it will continue to be implemented, the peace agreement that is, and the Colombian people can count on us as a country. Can count on our support, and I've seen in those 4 years Colombia already grow and prosper, and as an example, I think you could take tourism, although that now, given the COVID-19 crisis, is maybe a difficult example. But tourism over the last 4 years showed an enormous increase, also from the Netherlands. And I think that is also because people felt that in Colombia things were changing, the situation was improving, despite all the retos, the challenges in some regions where the situation is still very difficult. But that is a very long answer to your first question, but I think it merits a long answer because the peace agreement and that historic moment is important for Colombia.
Thank you very much. Of course, I think there's still a way to go, but I think the most important thing is, like you mentioned, it's a process the Netherlands is there to support. And I think also another sign of the importance that the Netherlands today gives to its relationship with Colombia, and also I think in that sense many things have happened in these past 4 years. For me personally, as director of the Holland House, for me one of the absolute highlights in the past years, of course, was the visit of the Prime Minister from the Netherlands that decided to be the first Prime Minister from the Netherlands to actually visit Colombia. He came with a very big delegation of companies in November 2018. It's been a while, but I think today we feel, and we are still feeling, a lot of effects from that visit. A lot of companies that came for the first time that are here today have established themselves in Colombia, have invested in this country. Of course, I want to thank you for allowing us to have or to be part of the organization team at that moment in the visit of the Prime Minister. Was it only special for me or also for you?
No, it was very, very special for me as well. Listen, as an ambassador to receive your Prime Minister, it's an honor and it's a great moment. I think you're right. I mean, Prime Minister Mark Rutte, he visited Colombia end of November 2018. I think he was the first mandatario, the first leader to visit Colombia. It was very much appreciated by President Duque. And of course he came with a large delegation. And as you said, it shows our interest, it shows our friendship. And it's a great recognition that Colombia is very important to the Netherlands. We are neighboring countries, you could say, with Aruba, Curaçao, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And the good thing was that the whole delegation showed this image of the kingdom with participation of ministers from Aruba, Curaçao, companies from the islands. And I think that it left a huge footprint. And as you say, we're still reaping the benefits from that visit. We focused on a couple of sectors, and I think it was a great co-production. Holland House did very well. We really needed your professionalism and your work to get this job done, because it was a big job and months of preparation. Personally, I'm also very happy that we managed to visit a region, not the region, a region, Apartado, where our Prime Minister could see a beautiful region, but with its challenges, and he handed out land titles that came about thanks to the work of the Dutch cadastre. And I think that's also shows the interest of the Dutch. It's not only a short visit to the capital. No, we want to know the country. We want to extend our hands also in other regions. And that's what he did. And since then, the two mandatarios, President Duque and Prime Minister Rutte, have had a very good relationship, and it has been very useful. Even now in this crisis, COVID-19, they share notes, they call to see what policies work, what policies do not work. And I think that has been a very important relationship that we can really build on. And also for my successor and for you, Jan Willem, with your great team, it's really a great foundation to do even more in the future.
And I think you mentioned the regions. For me, you have also been an ambassador that has been able, and I think also from the start, you had very clear that if you talk about Colombia, if you talk about development of the country, if you talk about opportunities for Dutch organizations in Colombia, you should also very much be in the regions. You mentioned that, and I think for me, you have also been an ambassador of the regions in Colombia. Can I say it like that?
You can, and I think that has been one of the many inspirations for me. The visits not only to great cities like Medellin, Cali, Cartagena, Barranquilla, but also to the regions and to the campesinos, to the people in the field. And I've learned a lot about the country, about being resilient, about being positive. We mentioned it already a couple of times. This country has many faces. It is a great diversity. It has challenges. And to understand the country well, you have to travel, because look at the geography. That's the first thing I always do with first-time visitors. Look at the map. It's a beautiful country, but the geography is quite difficult for a government. and especially for a Dutchman, Dutch woman, that's not easy to understand if you come from a small country, flat, very well developed, but easy to travel. But for me, that has been inspirational. And again, those visits I could not do without.
And I think, of course, the trade mission with the Prime Minister that we mentioned, with more than 100 companies that came, more than 200 businessmen that came to Colombia, were also able to visit other cities, other regions, but there's been many more. Before we had this talk, I made a small analysis and looking at the number of trade missions, the number of delegations we have had from the Netherlands and also from the Caribbean parts. And in 4 years, I counted more than 25 visits of delegations from the different parts of the kingdom. Have you ever seen that before in one of your previous posts? Have you seen that there were so many visits from the kingdom of businessmen?
From the kingdom, no, because of the special relationship. But yeah, I've worked and lived in India. We have many missions there, but I think you're right. I mean, it's you could say we are punching above our weight here. Many missions, and the good thing is that it's a two-way street. So it's not only Dutch entrepreneurs from a certain sector coming to Colombia, visiting Colombia, it's also the other way around, and interested Colombian businessmen and women. The life sciences and health sector is a good example, visiting the Netherlands because they want to interact with their counterparts, and I think that shows the potential, and that shows the interest. And I think it's the work that we as an embassy do, that you as Holland House are doing as well. We try to facilitate those visits and open doors, provide market access if that's difficult, and of course also the advice to visiting entrepreneurs is important, Dutch entrepreneurs. And what I always say is to them, it's good you're here because you have to know the country, you have to understand the people, you have to establish confidence, it's very important in Colombia, and you have to be patient, persistent and polite, and then business will come about.
Patient, persistent and polite. I think that should be in our manual. And also to speak a bit about the Holland House, I think in these 4 years, so if we look back, we have grown a lot, and that's something we are very proud of, and something that we really feel that we did together. When you arrived to Bogota, I think we had about 150 members of the Holland House. Today we have 260. Today we are the third bilateral chamber of commerce in Colombia. We have grown a lot. How has that process been for you? You have, of course, been at many of our events. You have been part of many of the Dutch companies coming over to this country for the first time, giving them a warm welcome, giving them advice. Mm-hmm. How have you seen the development of the Holland House in these past 4 years?
No, I tell you it's a small anecdote. And before I came here, a man called me, and it was Jan Bestebroertje, and we all know him as the founding father, the late Jan Bestebroertje now, as the founding father of Holland House. He was the first one to call me after my nomination, and he said, Jeroen, my name is Jan, I'm going to tell you about Colombia. And we had a great chat, and I learned so much from him. And from then onwards, I came to appreciate the Holland House. And Jan Willem, I'm not saying this because we now have this talk, but it has been a great pleasure to work with the Holland House, because it's an excellent chamber of commerce. And I think the numbers, they tell it all. You go from 150 to 260, 250 to 60, even more. And that means that the companies, and listen, these are businessmen and women, they are pleased with the work you're doing. So it's the best testimonial you can have. I've seen you grow as a person, but also as an entity with your colleagues. And the collaboration between us, between the Embassy, Holland House, has been excellent. Using the strengths of Holland House, your professionalism, your knowledge, and of course the network that we can also offer companies, the government-to-government network. And I've always been very eager and interested to open my doors and to be active for the companies, because it's one of our priorities to represent Dutch private sector interests.
And talking about opening your doors, I think something very special for me, but also I think something that shows great cultural understanding of the country Colombia and the way business works here. I've received many invitations from your side for breakfast sessions, for lunch sessions. Why did that become so important for you to also open your residence, to also receive delegations, businessmen, also of course the Colombian counterparts at your home?
Yeah, no, well, for me it's an important part of my work, not to have breakfast or lunch or dinner. It's always good, but it's to invite people at your house, at your residence, as an ambassador, because you provide Dutch and Colombian counterparts who might be interested to do business, who might be interested to talk about important topics. You provide them with an opportunity, and it cuts both ways. I mean, I'm there facilitating the interaction between Dutch and Colombian counterparts, but it's also very, very interesting for me. I've learned so much at this table, sitting with Colombian invitados, always interested to talk about Colombia and the dynamics here, and I've learned a lot from it. And the same applies to the Dutch visitors, because their business, their expertise, yeah, I mean, that's part of what I like, is also very inspirational to me. So it has been a pleasure. You're right, we have had many visitors, many breakfasts.
I didn't count them.
No.
I did count the missions, but the breakfast and lunch, I didn't count them. But
I think Laura, my wife, my dear wife, who has been very important, also supporting me with all those events. She calculated that on average we had at least 2 events per week at the residence, but it has been a great inspiration and pleasure.
Then moving on to the next point, but also in some way moving forward. Of course, the Netherlands has become, in the last years, actually, I think that's a rather recent tendency. The Netherlands has become one of the main foreign investors in Colombia. When I came here in 2013, when you arrived a few years later, in those years we actually became a very important foreign investor in the country, and we are today at least one of the 10 main countries that is investing in Colombia, which of course also means that our companies, it becomes every time more important for those companies to have a double tax treaty. That's something I know you have been working on very actively. It's been for you a very high priority from the beginning, and I think it's something that you're leaving behind in a very good moment and with a lot of perspectives. Yeah. Can you reflect on that?
Yes, of course. And I'm very happy you asked me now, because there is actually good news, and that's another small anecdote. Every time before I go to an embassy, I make a short list, 10 priorities, things that I think are important to achieve. And the visit of the Prime Minister was on my list. You never know whether you succeed, but the double taxation treaty, the avoidance of double taxation, was on that list too, because I've heard from my predecessor Robert that they were still working on it, negotiating, and it was, for me, it was frustrating for quite some time, because I thought, listen, we are a big investor here, we have a lot of interests, well-respected Dutch companies, and how is it so difficult to get this tax treaty, which is so important to them? And you're right, I mean, it took 4 years, but I'm very happy to now say and announce that the negotiations have been concluded. So we have a text that will be signed, I think, within months. So the text is ready. There's no more outstanding issue at all. So that's great news, because the 2 mandatarios Rutte and Duque, when they had their conversation, they promised to try and finish these negotiations as quickly as possible. It took a bit more time, but here we are, and I think before the end of the year it will be signed.
I'm very glad, and I think I speak for all the Dutch companies that invested, that are today present with their foothold in Colombia. We are very happy that you made this a priority and you pushed the double tax treaty forward. Thank you for that. Hopefully we will soon be able to take the next step and actually get the signatures. But that's great news. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Of course, I've done my part, but the negotiations have been also work of the experts, and they know everything. Every detail of this agreement, but we did our some pushing and it worked.
And of course, when the signing will take place, there will be a lot of press attention for the signing of the double tax treaty. And before we had this conversation, I thought a bit about the moments in the past 4 years that might have generated most press attention, and I think there are two that without doubt have been the main moments that there was a lot of attention also in the Netherlands for Colombia, and that would be the following two. The first one, the situation we had with a Dutch journalist, Dirk Bolt, in Norte de Santander, and of course more recently, in light of the COVID-19 situation, the repatriation flights from the Netherlands, from Colombia to the Netherlands, to bring home tourists, people that wanted to go back to the Netherlands. But let's first zoom in on the first one, Dirk Bolt. Is that also, if you look back at the past 4 years, is that also something that comes into your mind?
It does. A very difficult moment, but consular work for us is also a priority, very important for the embassy, for an ambassador. We are there for Dutch business interest, we are there to support in Colombia the peace process, but we are also there for Dutch tourists, Dutch citizens, if they are in need of help. And now many Dutch tourists, as I've said before, they have visited Colombia without any problem because they follow our travel advice. But in this case, Dirk and Eus, the two of them who have been here many times for their famous Dutch television program Spoorloos, they traveled to Norte de Santander, Catatumbo. And that's a red zone, which means do not visit, but they did for their program, and they drove into the arms of an ELN unit, and those were very difficult days for them, especially, but also for us. The moment I heard about it, I decided to travel to Cucuta to coordinate our efforts, my efforts, to get them released as quickly as possible, using our contacts locally. But it was a very stressful week, again, especially for them. But I was very happy that we managed their liberation with very close collaboration with the church, with other entities, and that we could welcome them they were very exhausted, but in good health. And now it's one of the examples, and it got a lot of publicity because Dirk is well known in the Netherlands. And but we managed it well. The repatriation flights more recently, yes, I haven't said it really, but the COVID-19 crisis is hitting everywhere. The Netherlands, but of course also in Colombia, and it's really it's quite a challenge for Colombia, and you just have to imagine what it means to many people in the informal sector here, but also in the formal sector. It's a big blow for an economy that was really growing quite well. The repatriation flights we organized in excellent collaboration with KLM and the government. Again, the Colombian government very helpful there, despite the fact that there were no commercial flights allowed. They did allow humanitarian flights, and KLM was willing to organize these flights with us. It's a lot of work, but we have seen more than 2,000 Dutch tourists. We talked about the tourists already. There were 2,000 here. And from one moment to the other, they had to think twice about what to do. And although they were enjoying, of course, Colombia so much, they decided to go back. And we have managed to organize it. And 2,000 have left. And we are still in the process, but most now have left. And I hope that in 2 months' time that it will be able, we will be able to see commercial flights again.
Well, getting to the second part of this interview, Jeroen, what I would like to do is that you have been here for 4 years. You have had many experiences as an ambassador. Also, you have been able to see different parts of the country. You have gotten to know its people. So I'm going to give you a few subjects, and I would like to ask you if you could share with me the first things that come to mind. So just share me some keywords for you, some first impressions, some words that for you summarize very well for you the main content and the main thoughts about the subjects that I'm going to mention. Okay. The first one would of course be your team. I have seen your team at the embassy, a great team, also a big team, a team that I think works very well together, also with us as Holland House. I think we form one team. But your team, your first words.
The words are determined, enthusiastic. I'm very proud of my team. I'm a demanding ambassador, but they have done it all for me and with me. So I'm gonna miss them dearly.
I can imagine. Does the same apply to our team? Of course, we have worked as one team, as we mentioned, but how have you experienced? Well, I think the biggest proof we had of that, or the biggest test we had, maybe that's a better word, was of course the visit of the Prime Minister, in which we, during 1 month, the last month of preparations, we have to be there as a team, and of course it's an enormous quantity of work.
Yeah. No, the same applies to your team. I think you have excellent people at the Holland House. I know most of them, and I'm very grateful to them. Very, very professional, motivated, and I think also we have managed to play into one another's strength as an embassy and as Holland House. So very proud of you guys too.
No, and I know, the same of course applies to them. They are very thankful to you, Jeroen, but also we are going to miss you dearly.
Yeah.
That's, I think, also after
Thank
4
you.
years of intense cooperation.
Yeah.
And I know that for them also an accessible ambassador, which you have been, who you have been for all of us, that's something very special, that you opened your house, but it's also that you were there and they all felt that they knew the ambassador and that you were very close to them. So thank you for that. I think that's something very special.
It was a great pleasure, and here we have to recognize, Jan Willem, you and I, that most of our colleagues at the embassy and at the Holland House are women, and I'm really impressed by their entrepreneurial spirit and their professionalism. So that's we have to recognize that, I think.
I do, and completely true. Thank you very much for your words. Looking at the future, and looking at the future of the Holland House, of course, we started in 2013 being a pilot, then we grew, then we showed that fortunately there's every time more interest from the business community in the Netherlands to become active in Colombia. I think in these past 4 years we took the next step. We almost doubled as Holland House in total activity, but we also saw that Colombia is now on the agenda of the Dutch private sector as well. How do you see our future? Do you think we have reached the point where no more companies can come to Colombia, or do you feel Colombia is still a country in which many Dutch companies should be active but are not at this moment?
No, I think well, the future of Holland House is very bright. despite the fact that the current crisis makes also your life difficult. I mean, let's not deny that. It's a huge challenge for you, and the longer it takes to recover from that crisis for the country, for the economy, the more difficult it will be for you. Nevertheless, I think your future is very bright because your business model is sound, very, very sound. And you have a good team, people who try to work and think differently, also within the new context of the coronavirus crisis. Innovative, virtual matchmaking. So I think that these are important qualities that you will need. But overall, I think the future is bright, and to go into the promising sectors, I think in many sectors where we are already active, whether it's life sciences and health, agriculture, I think there's much more potential. And also there, let's not deny it. It will take half a year at least for the activities that we were planning, that you were planning, to be back on track. But it will come because this country has great potential. It's a big market, very, very interesting location. So I think it will come back. And as a Holland House, you will be an important player.
It will come back, and I also think, and that's also a question to you. I know you have also been the ambassador of the bicycle in Colombia. And if you mentioned sectors like life science and health, you mentioned agriculture, but also, of course, there's been much focus in the past years on mobility, on sustainable mobility from your side. It has been part of the priorities of the embassy. How important is cycling in Colombia in general, and how important is cycling in Colombia at this specific moment? If you look at the big cities, mobility, COVID-19, how have you experienced the bicycle in Colombia?
No, for me it has been a pleasure to focus so much on sustainable mobility with a particular focus on the bicycle. Listen, I mean, Colombia does not need a lot of explaining in terms of the pleasure to go on a bicycle, but it was above all it was for recreational means. But you see it everywhere, and the best cyclists are to be found here in Colombia. But of course, the big challenge is to also make it into the bicycle into a day-to-day means of transport. And I think there Bogota is showing what is possible with ciclorutas, with many challenges in terms of traffic safety, security. But listen, I mean, the short way to the embassy, when I take my bicycle, I can see hundreds of cyclists who go to work on their bicycle. And the potential is so big here because you have already the interest, the Colombian interest in the bicycle, and now with the COVID-19, I think the golden age of the bicycle is really arriving, not only in the Netherlands but also in Colombia.
Of course, from the Holland House perspective, like you mentioned, the bicycle as a means of urban mobility, that for us is crucial, because I think it's one of the sectors in which we see that most new Dutch organizations could become active here. But going back one moment to the bicycle as a means also for recreation and sports. Last year we had a Colombian winner of the Tour de France, Egan Bernal.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to be the last Colombian winner? Are we going to win it all as Dutch in the next years? Or do you think Colombians winning the Tour de France is going to be rather normal in the future?
I think it's going to be normal, really. Now I'm going to say that although I think that Egan Bernal his numbers are really impressive, but my favorite for the Tour de France is going to be Nairo Quintana. Also because I met him 2 weeks back, and
how was that?
Yeah, that was really, for me, that was one of the highlights. It was great to take a cafecito with Nairo and talk about life, Colombia, sports, everything. Again, it struck me that those cyclists, those great guys, they all have they are from modest households, and they are now heroes. But I think that they have their focus not only on cycling but also on trying to help improve their environment, their region, and he's one example. And of course, it was great to ride with him on the bicycle for 40, it's nothing really, kilometers, but enough for me. And he was very gentle, so the pace was my pace, not his pace. But again, great guy, impressive personality, and I really hope that he will do what he started out to do at the beginning of this season, and that is winning.
I have to say that of course we hope that a Dutch guy will win the Tour de France this year at the end of August. But of course it would be, being in this country and living the sports culture in this country, it would also be very nice if Nairo Quintana, who I think
True.
has been working to this moment, has been training, has been close in the past, would win the Tour de France this year. So
It's true.
I wouldn't mind.
No, I wouldn't mind either. Of course, Tom Dumoulin is my. I hope that he will do well after a year of absence, but it will be nice to see a finish between him and Nairo Quintana uphill. And
you also mentioned, of course, the Colombian people, the biodiversity, the diverse regions, and you also mentioned that Colombia is quickly becoming a very attractive tourism destination also for Dutch people traveling here, 2,000 persons that did go back with the repatriation flights. If you would have to say, because you have also been able to visit different parts of the country, I would like to see if you have some tips for future travelers to Colombia. If you look at the regions, of course there are many, and there might be a lot of places that you would recommend, but what if you think back in 10 years and you think of Colombia and you think of the most beautiful place you visited, what do you think of?
It's an impossible question, especially in Colombia, but Jan-Willem, I'll do my best. I think I've seen many regions, breathtaking views. The Pacific coast, the Caribbean coast, the Páramos, which really I particularly like to walk there with my wife. We have been at many Páramos, but if you ask me to name one, I think one very impressive visit was to El Cocuy National Park, when my wife and I, with a guide, terrific guide, who told us about his region, we climbed up, we walked up, I should say, to Ritacuba Blanco. So we were very close to the glacier. It was to almost 5,000 meters, and it was really, I love the mountains, and this was just spectacular. We stayed at the Cabañas Cambara, and we had great conversations with the people there who told us about that region, the natural beauty, how they tried to preserve it, and this was one of the best visits in those 4 years. But I could give you 50.
In Colombia, also to other aspects of the culture, the Colombian kitchen. Colombian kitchen, of course, very diverse, very different in the different parts of the country, and for sure, at the many visits, dinners you have had, you have been able to experience the cuisine of different parts of the country. If you look at restaurants, or you look at the kitchen in the different regions, what do you remember of that? What is for you maybe the highlight of that part of Colombia, which is also so important?
Yeah, let me start very simple, and that is when I would climb up on my bicycle to Patios here near Bogota to enjoy a good arepa is fantastic. It's very simple, but it's very good and
rewarding after
a climb. I particularly liked the Caribbean kitchen. I like fish a lot, and in Cartagena with arroz de coco and fantastic dishes there. The somewhat heavier dishes, good, although sometimes difficult For me, the Dutch people, they don't, when they have lunch, it's not like a lavish lunch. We're very modest there, but I enjoyed it. And restaurants in Bogota, our favorite really for many years, but it's closed now, was Villanos and Bermudas. And it was a fusion kitchen, fantastic food in Chapinero. And if I had to name another one, it's a great cook. It's a Belgian guy. It's called Klaas. It's nearby Parque 93. No, it's actually here Parque Virey. And he's a great cook, and he also incorporates a lot of Colombian food and dishes into his menus. So those are two examples, but I truly enjoyed it.
And I have had the possibility to travel with you to different cities, to different regions of the country. And of course, I think one of the great things of Colombia is its people. And to see also for many people, most of all in the regions, to see an ambassador that actually is accessible. I have seen children in the different regions react to your visits and to you being open to play a bit of football with them, or to be able to take a picture with them. Something very special for them, something they have probably never done with an ambassador before. So also for you, looking back on 4 years Colombia, you have probably many memories, you have many very beautiful anecdotes of what you have been able to live here. I think it's difficult, but is there one that you will never forget, something that you...
Yeah, there's many very good memories, but one that comes to mind, it's also because last week I had with them a virtual meeting, a llamada, it's with students from Tumaco. And in Tumaco, the National University, Universidad Nacional de Colombia, has a dependance, una sede, where they offer also education to local young aspiring people. So these are students from Tumaco, and we have financed the construction of this dependance, of this building there in Tumaco, and I visited twice, and I have a great memory of my interaction with them, talking about life, talking about what education means to them, how it will change their own life, but also of their family, and hopefully also of their community. And so that's a great memory, and it was really very emotional, but also a difficult moment for me, and it makes it a bit more funny, because they are, like all Colombians, great dancers, and they made me dance salsa choque, which I must say is fantastic to watch for me, but to do it is something completely different. But I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm very grateful for their openness with me, and I will miss that. And so there's many more of those examples, but this is just what came to mind.
And I think the slogan the Colombian government used during a time to promote tourism, which was the only risk is wanting to stay.
Yeah.
I know you cannot stay, and that's something that gives me a bit of sadness. But I think you will be back. I think in the future you will for sure, maybe as a tourist, you will visit this country again. Is it so? Are you coming back?
Absolutely.
And do you have any idea when that would be?
Jan Willem, let me just say here also thank you for your confidence and your friendship. I will miss you as well. But no, I will be back, and I will see the work you're doing with your team, and how the Holland House has grown even more beyond 300, 400 members. But I will be back because, as they also sometimes say, Colombia got under my skin.
Perfect. I will be here waiting for you to come back, and of course I will try to visit you in Morocco, where you're going to be stationed next as the new ambassador. Thank you very much once again for being such a great ambassador, for being such a great friend as well. Also being in many ways, I've learned a lot from you. We will see each other in the future. For now, I want to thank you very much for this small interview that we did to give, to look back. In the end, it was also like, for me, a moment to look back on the past 4 years, look forward as well, and to summarize a bit some of the milestones we have had together and never forget them. So thank you very much, Jeroen.
Thank you, Jan.